Hello and welcome to Ask a NaviGuide, which is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series from United Church Homes. I'm Mike, your host, and on this show we tackle subjects in aging and family caregiving that can be stressful to work through. And we do this with tips and advice from United Church Homes' NaviGuide team. Our NaviGuides have decades of experience helping families work through these issues, and we hope that what we share on this show will help everyone everywhere age with abundance, or at least lower a little bit of stress, save you time. Today, we're lucky to have our NaviGuide, Kimberly, with us, who will help us understand another subject in this series about dementia and Alzheimer's. And that's really around dementia and exploitation and the warning signs that maybe someone that you care about that has a dementia diagnosis may be putting themselves into a position to be taken advantage of, that sort of thing. So always joyful subjects, but very important. But before we get started, I'm going to read this statement that the opinions shared in this podcast are those of, let's say, myself and our amazing NaviGuides, and are not meant to convey or take the place of clinical, legal, or other professional advice. So with that being said, hello, Kimberly.
Hi, Mike. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's great to see you again. And, I think it's like right off the bat, I think it's important to know that while the risk of exploitation is higher if you have dementia, it's not inevitable, right? Like everybody that has dementia is not going to be exploited, right?
Correct. It boils down.
No, I mean, that's the thing, because I think everyone should know that people generally have your best interests at heart, and especially you with your experience, working with people that have dementia. And actually, that's a good point. Can you just kind of remind us where your passion of supporting people with dementia has come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a proud advocate and volunteer community educator with the Alzheimer's Association, and a very proud service coordinator in NaviGuide, working with senior citizens in independent living communities.
Yeah.
I just love them. They're like family, even though we're a poor substitute for real family. We see each other.
No, don't say that. You become family.
We do.
And, I guess we're talking about this subject just because it's the things that you've seen, and not common. You've probably seen people kind of get put into positions they normally wouldn't get into just because of the dementia diagnosis. Does any stories come to mind?
Yes, there is one. And the reason it's so important to go see your doctor and to continue to have those regular mental health evaluations, exams, just to keep track of things and stuff like that, is because you want to protect yourself from abuse, neglect, and exploitation. There was a situation I ran into one time with one of my residents where the family was just expected to step up to the plate and assist, as their mother ages and stuff like that. She was in an independent living community, but the family wasn't taking her regularly to see her doctor, to get the things that she needed. So she was just kind of left there flying solo. And when we would inquire, hey, how you doing? It is 30 degrees out here. What are you doing out here this hour? You'd show up to work at 7 a.m. and see this poor woman in nothing but, a little silk nightie. And you're starting to notice some signs that something might not be right. When was the last time somebody bought her a robe or whatever the case may be? And then it progressed, the property manager, hey, she hasn't paid her rent in the last 2 months. And so then you start really investigating. And when you do, you realize, well, there's a reason her family hasn't taken her, because they were exploiting her.
Oh, dear.
And taking what little bit of Social Security she brought in. And so they didn't want to have that diagnosis official, because if it was, then protective services could step in and get her protection.
Right. And is that what happened as a result? I mean, what would you typically do in a situation like that?
You would definitely be the biggest advocate you can be. You call it out, but Unfortunately, without a diagnosis on file, it did take protective services a while to show all the proof. They had to gather all the bank statements that this was happening. We were her only protection and shield during that time frame of investigation that took place. And sadly, it took a medical emergency where she had to be taken to the hospital, and other joining forces, other advocates, the hospital workers, social workers and stuff, to then contact APS and get them. It took that before something was done and she was placed in a safe environment.
Right. So APS is Adult Protective Services, correct?
Yes.
Is that something that typically the state runs, or is that what the government runs? Or I mean, how do you find the APS for your area? Is it just a Google search, or?
Yeah, it's through the Department of Human Services. And just Google Department of Human Services or Adult Protective Services. Either Google search will take you to your local phone number and agency to call.
Gotcha. And so you call Adult Protective Services and you say, I think I know someone that's at risk. This person, I'm not a doctor, but I suspect that they may have some cognitive impairment or dementia that's affecting their judgment. I've been seeing this, I've been seeing that, the rent's late, that sort of thing. What are they going to say in response?
Yeah. So you call and you say, I would like to file a report, open a case. This is the situation. There's going to be a lot of questions they ask of you. Be prepared to really tell them everything so you can get that ball rolling with some assistance. And then what it looks like is one of their case managers will be either calling you within the next, couple of hours, or sending someone out. They do send people out too shortly after that call to meet with the person you're calling in reference to. You just go over all the observations, get the facts, basically.
Mm-hmm. What sort of facts would they typically be looking for? Like in your case, you'd say, I've noticed this person has been wandering outside without proper coat, or the rent's late. I mean, these are all signals, right?
Right. Facts such as, how well are they keeping their hygiene? Are they becoming a danger to themselves? Or have they been robbed of that ability to take care of, proper hygiene because they don't have no soap? How is their nutrition? Are they at risk for malnutrition? Some of these red flags. And then, of course, the further details of, okay, let's look at the bank account. Let's look at the food stamp card. When was the last time it was used?
Right. Goodness. Okay, let's say, and I've done a little bit of work here, too. I'm not an expert, but if I'm first diagnosed with dementia, and that, aside from being scared and frightened, what are some of the things that you've typically seen people do that they can do to protect themselves? Do they? I mean, there's things like advanced directives for your health and finance. Is that? Am I on the right track there?
Yes. Those advanced directives are very important because those ensure your voices and your wishes are being heard and respected. What loved ones and what support system are you going to encompass yourself with? That's those things. There's things called 5 wishes, living wills, power of attorneys, guardianship, all those important decisions. And the tricky part with exploitation and dementia, if you do not have those advanced directives in place, and heaven forbid you develop dementia, and one of your children that might be, led astray at the moment or struggling with any kind of substance abuse or just any kind of thing of their own, and they start to assume care of you, it's very difficult, very, very difficult for the dementia diagnosis to be proven without the support of your family and other advocates, if it's just done through merely employees and the state. They have to have a lot of proof and significant reason to invade someone's, privacy like that, because there have been some situations where people have called just out of disgruntled, trying to make it seem like that when it wasn't really the case.
Yeah, there's all the checks and balances. I can understand that. So, advanced care directive for health. Important to pick someone that is reliable, that you know that you have best interest at heart. Um, Advanced directives from health, I know that that person can make decisions for you for health matters. You can also say, hey, if I'm in the hospital, this person can visit, this person can't visit. And I think there's also advanced directives for finances and estate planning that can be set up as well. Um, a lot of the other things, well, some of the other things that I'm noticing here, people, dementia, independence, and my spending power, and the pride I have in having money in my pocket and having control over a bank account and things like that. I mean, have you ever seen situations where people can just get kind of crazy with money when they have certain forms of dementia?
Yes, Mike. Unfortunately, one of the signs of dementia is inability to make a budget and manage your money. Poor judgment skills sadly are involved where people have been easily scammed by a phone call saying they're your insurance company, you need to pay this right now. People are vulnerable who have dementia to those type of calls, and yeah, just
Yeah.
it's very sad the degeneration that takes place, and that's why it's very important to have those advanced directives that you were talking about, because they encompass all those wellness dimensions that you want to have a say in. What's your spiritual preference? How would you like this situation to be handled? What about the medical? Would you like, a DNR? Do you not want one? Just your wishes are able and your voice to be heard.
Right. And you can also put in things like, I don't agree to arbitration or other types of things. If you, yeah. Um, when you're thinking about control and dementia, I mean, I recall stories about, I guess, is aphasia when it kind of affects the frontal, some forms of dementia lead themselves to sort of weird behavioral things going on, right? Yeah.
Yes, but it goes back to the individual person, based on their medical history, some of those other physiological factors going on, because each person, not two people with dementia are the same. It's still an individualized process that affects each person differently, which is why it's so important to have person centered care.
Yes. Yeah. And if we go back and pertinence and care, at least as I like to think about it, it means that if I need help or support, or if I have limitations, I at least feel like I have a sense of control, like I have autonomy with that, right?
Absolutely. And a chance to have some of those beautiful memories relived, because that person centered care is going to know what's special to me. What are they going to bring up to me that's going to trigger that wonderful brief moment of escape from that daily
Yeah.
reality?
Wow. And thinking again about finances and thinking about these, the tendency for you get scammed or out of control, advanced directives, or I know that with brokerage accounts, there can be what we call a trusted contact, and that's somebody that gets alerted if something is concerning is happening with the account. So for your brokerage account, you can set up this trusted contact, and if they see something wonky in terms of your trading activity or withdrawals or whatever, there's checks and balances there. I think what's also really good that I've noticed about banks is that when at least with my parents, if they're doing a wire transfer or something like that, the bank seems to be in the habit of saying, do you know what this wire transfer is for? Well, they're in Canada. At least in Canada, that's what's happened. I'm not sure if that's in the States. I don't think there's a requirement for banks to do that with checking accounts or with savings accounts. But there's fraud alerts you can set up. There's credit monitoring that can be set up for people, right? Yeah, and you can get those reports.
Yes, and we advocate for all seniors to do that, not just those with dementia or Alzheimer's, because people easily, part of the human condition, I'm 35 and I experience it, just accidentally leaving, my keys somewhere that, just left them on the top of the car, or the debit cards, especially. If those debit cards get left or mistaken for an insurance card or something, and you hand your debit card to the doctor's office and accidentally leave it in the waiting room, just a random example, having those fraud protection services are definitely a benefit to all seasons of life, but especially those with dementia and Alzheimer's.
Right. So there are three credit reporting agencies. I think it's Experian, TransUnion, and the third one but at least I've done this, I set up fraud alerts regularly. I think you have to do it like at least once a year, a couple times a year, to redo your fraud. Same thing with do not call registries. You can set yourself up on a do not call registry. You can keep track of your FICO score or a loved one's FICO score if it goes out of spec. Another tip that I've heard is that it's with a person, if you're taking care of somebody who has dementia and money is an issue, it may be good just to actually give them some cash to carry around, right? But there's a limit there. Once the cash is out, the cash is out. What do you think about that?
Yeah, encouraging that sense of normalcy and just those day-to-day functions that they're used to doing, but may not be understanding why things are changing or why they're going through some of the struggles they are. That would definitely encourage it. And as long as their loved one or a trusted caregiver is transporting them to and from places where they're doing their shopping, that absolutely encourages positive, self-autonomy still, even though they may not have it.
Yeah, because it feels good to know that you have money in your pocket, right? It's a good thing. I also know, and I don't have any names, but there are kind of emerging services out there that will kind of, I don't know, be in between the bank and the love, like giving somebody a debit card that has a daily limit on it, or things like that. I think that those solutions seems to be out there, that if you can kind of change a debit card to one where, you can only spend $500 a day or things like that.
Yes, absolutely. Those are wonderful newer resources that are out there. And there is some definite information packets that you can find on the Division of Aging Services website, alz.org, which is the Alzheimer's Association. Many different websites and services out there that have resources of how to protect yourself as best you can from some of those exploitation, scams, and fraudulent activities.
Got it. And well, I think that's great. Those resources are fantastic. Anything else comes to mind on this subject, do you think, or something that may stick in your mind from someone you've helped that you think listeners should know about?
Just know you're not alone. If you find yourself in a situation where you've been exploited or are witnessing a loved one who has Alzheimer's be exploited, your voice matters. You can be the one, maybe the only one, to advocate for their behalf. And as sad as it is to realize, man, how did that happen? Why is this a reality in our world? It's also so rewarding to know you've been trusted as their voice. You can be that advocate to the best of your ability, and it matters. There is support out there. There is resources. You are not alone.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Well, before I tear up more, I just wanted to thank you, our listeners, for listening to another episode of Ask a NaviGuide. And this is part of the Abundant Aging podcast series brought to you by United Church Homes. If you enjoyed this week's show, please like, share, subscribe so we can bring you more of this great, you think I've learned to say that already, right? Bring you more of this great content. We can be found on abundantagingpodcast.com. And you can listen to our other episodes there. You can also subscribe. You can listen on our YouTube page, United Church Homes. You can also give us comments and feedback and ideas for shows, because we want to hear from you. And we want to know what's important to you and what we should be covering. For more information about the United Church Homes NaviGuide program, please visit uchnaviguide.org. For more information about United Church Homes and also our Comfort Matters Dementia Care Program, that's unitedchurchhomes.org. And if you're listening past July of 2023, just know that we are likely to have our caregiver resource site up and running by that time, which is abundantaging.org, because we want to help everyone, everywhere age with abundance. So thank you for listening again, and until next time.